Iowa's News Now Sports brings you black and gold glory. Your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
And on a week where Penn State goes wide out, we, without planning it, have gone blackout. Look at us go. Welcome to Eye on the Hawks, pre-Penn State edition. Mitch Fick, Owen Sebring, Mike Howell here. Breaking down the number 24 Hawkeyes, 3-0, heading to Happy Valley, taking on the 7th-ranked undefeated Penn State Nittany Lions. Always a fun time when those two tangle. Thanks as always to everybody who's been subscribing and downloading and watching, consuming, spreading the word however you can and have. It's been really cool to see. Remember, if you're just listening to this version, the YouTube version is where we've got all the video stuff. YouTube's a visual medium after all, so that's a really great way to really up the ante in terms of your consumption. Of course, you get to consume Iowa Penn State on CBS 2, 6:30 kickoff on Saturday from Beaver Stadium. And Mike said there was a surprise. He found the soundtrack. Hopefully there's no royalties to pay. But what a cool thing here. Iowa was sharing some really cool CBS factoids. This is the first game Iowa's had on CBS proper, the national network, since the 97 Sun Bowl against Arizona State. First regular season game for them since 1986. What a great year that was, playing Michigan. So it has been a minute, as the kids say. Iowa 11-4-1 lifetime on CBS games for those of you who have certain apps on your phone and like to make things interesting and look for any sort of advantage whatsoever. Going to be a fun game to have on the national stage, and of course a really great show for you guys coming up on Eye on the Hawks at a special time this week again as well.
That's right. Wait, what time is Eye on the Hawks this week?
5:30 on Fox 28 on Thursday, and then on Saturday it's going to air at noon on CBS 2.
Have we had Eye on the Hawks at the same time in any shows this week?
It's a wild card. It's
tough because Fox has baseball, and then last week they had a pregame show. This week they don't, so we got a 5:30. So we're getting the lead into the baseball game.
Yeah. Well, that's all right.
That's
Keep
big.
watching Fox, and you'll see Eye on the Hawks.
That's big for the other side of the building for sure.
I feel like there's a lot of across the board in sports journalism and broadcasting, we find innocuous stats that really don't mean anything. I think the 11-4-1 record might be one of the most.
These are things that
on the
matter.
Network, whatever. Who cares?
Things that matter.
Yeah, but that is interesting that we're going to be bringing it on our home Columbia Broadcasting.
There you go. Yeah, super
There's
cool.
also some interesting stats in the Penn State Iowa series. Did you guys see that on the game notes this week?
I just know Iowa Penn State every time is going to be a little wacky.
Iowa's 8-7 all time in Happy Valley, so they have a winning record. Kirk Ferentz is 10-8 against them.
Yeah.
And the series, since they joined the Big Ten, is 11-11. So I feel like nationally, you think Penn State is the better program. They probably got more history, but it's been a tight series.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I feel like it. I mean, again, I'd have to go back and check the records and see who has a winning record against whom. But when I think of the other perennial Big Ten powers like Michigan and Ohio State, I feel like Iowa does not play quite as well against them. But Penn State, they seem to always find a way to come out, and that's one of the hardest games they play every time.
And that might just be because Kirk still has that chip on his shoulder. He talked about that in Tuesday's press availability. They apparently didn't recruit 200-pound linebackers who run 5 flats. That apparently wasn't in high demand back in the Kirk Ferentz playing days. Of course, he had some fullback in him too, moved there as a JV guy up on the varsity. But that's another story for another day. Our focus to start the show is who will not be making the trip to Happy Valley. Luke Lachey, confirmed yesterday by Coach Ferentz, had surgery for a lower right leg injury. Still not 100% on what exactly it was, but it's something that's going to knock him out for the rest of at least the regular season and probably well into December as well. We knew it was going to be a rough spot. We saw the injury. Here's a look back on what happened against Western Michigan. We knew right away just the way that leg stiffened up, the way he laid back, that it was not going to be good news. And so tight end U has an opportunity to really show how deep that tight end depth is as we get to see more of Steve Stylianos, Eric All, of course, transferring in from Michigan, Addison Ostrenga. Heck, Hayden Large, the fullback, he's a tight end from Dort. Maybe he gets some reps in there as well, but there's Luke leaving the field on Saturday. Also missing the game in Happy Valley, Caleb Johnson and Jazz Patterson, your top 2 running backs. Of course, Caleb setting the freshman rushing record for Iowa in 2022. Jazz having his breakout game against Iowa State, then got dinged up against Western. Next man in for the running backs, too. We talked about this as well a little bit, that thankfully these are probably the two deepest positions on in terms of depth chart for Iowa, because next man in is Lachey Williams, who's been here forever and had the game of his life against the Broncos.
He said it about 3 times too during the press conference after the game last week. Next man in, we heard it. I don't know. I know it's kind of like a mantra, a cliche, but they actually live that.
They do, yeah, and it's always, you're reminded of that when you get into situations like this, that, you know, train as a one, you're going to be ready when your number gets called to be a one. And boy, Liddell Betts talked to the media earlier here on Wednesday. I wasn't on the call, was working on another project that we'll talk about in a little bit, but reporters say that he said something about talking to LaShawn Sunday or Monday after Iowa State, where he only had one carry of, hey, like, you might be up sooner or later, so stay ready. He stayed ready, and boy, he looked every bit of it.
I still would need a little bit of convincing to call Iowa RBU. I mean, this program.
You said that, though, going into the post game against Western Michigan, because he had 8 rushers, including Cade, and then I think LaShawn dropped the RBU, and I immediately looked to you, and you maybe had a little glint of a smile on your face.
That's what I said. I mean, as great as they looked against Western Michigan, I mean, as I think even LaShawn said, he said to the reporters in the room, y'all could have run through some of those lines that the O-line
He's
provided.
really overestimating our field vision, though. And athleticism and
I would like
general
to see
coordination.
Scott Docterman pad up out there, get some pads on, tote the rock behind that line.
Who's the Iowa reporter that would get the most yards? Now we don't have to go.
Boy,
that's
a discussion for another. John Bonenkamp a few years ago went to camp for at least a day, maybe 2, with Western Illinois, which was super cool. I remember that, and boy, this is probably going back maybe a decade, but that was awesome, getting to read his first-person perspective of going through fall camp.
That is an interesting question. Who's the most athletic guy in that room?
I don't know.
Is it Chad Leistico?
I don't know.
He looks like
There's a few athletes.
I know he said on his pod he used to do some sports.
Yeah.
Do some sports.
I
That
used
sounded
to
so
do some
athletic.
sports.
Yeah, he still looks athletic for his age.
That's a discussion
Anyway,
for another day. We'll have a
but-
decathlon at some point this summer, and we'll get an answer.
I still would love to see a little bit more out of the running back room. It's gonna depend a lot on what we see out of Lachey Williams and potentially Kamari Moulton on Saturday.
I think definitely Kamari Moulton. I mean, he's a freshman, and we don't get to talk to true freshmen a whole lot, but when you have a game like he did, and then he walks into the post-game room against Western Michigan or after Western Michigan, you're a baby, you're a child. Like, he just, he runs like a grown man, but boy, you see him and he kind of has that all shucks attitude to him too. Just so cool to see him show out. I know, again, Kirk doesn't bring up a lot of players, especially freshmen, unprompted unless he's really impressed. He's brought up both Kamari and TJ Washington, who's now RB3, and everybody's probably going to get a little bit of a tout and a tote because you're going to need everyone against the Nittany line front.
I have to think it's only a matter of time, too, before we see Hayden Large get some carries. I mean, it seems like there's just one game where they're going to line him up there behind the quarterback and let him pound one into the end zone.
Something interesting I watched on my rewatch during the game is that on spots where they had a fullback do a lead blocker, this was like 3 or 4 times, they had Eric all back there. One of Kamari's touchdowns, Eric was the lead blocker, got a really good seal off on someone, and then they did 2 other times. So I don't know if that's just Hayden getting into the position of fullback, or if they like Eric. He's a good blocker.
I think you can rotate everybody. I mean, it might as well, because your tight ends are going to need to block. Your wide receivers are going to need to block. We heard that from LaShawn talking about Deontay Vines on that screen pass as well.
Yeah, and well, speaking of Deontay, I think he was the one who had the quote about Lachey, where he said something to the effect of, "You're going to have the greatest comeback that Iowa fans have ever seen." And I am trying to dissect what he means by that. If he thinks that Luke, it seems like the possibility is out there that Luke could play in a bowl game, possibly, maybe, if recovery goes well. Did he mean that, or do you think that Luke is considering coming back for another year? I mean, he could come back if he's NFL ready for sure, but could he come back for another year? Would he?
I took it just as Deontay pumping up his boy, just like, hey, like, you're gonna come back and be 100% no matter where you're going. Like, this isn't the end for you. This is a small setback for a large comeback, things like that. But hey, maybe they know something we don't.
Yeah,
they usually do.
Yeah, he made it. He kind of said it in there that Iowa fans are going to be talking about forever, something like that.
Right,
So,
It'd be interesting to see how this impacts his draft stock if he does leave. I think it wouldn't that much, because if he's ready by next year, I think there's enough tape on him that okay, he's going to be like Sam Laporta and Hawkinson. He's going to be an NFL ready tight end.
Sam Laporta also, I believe I saw the stat, he's the first NFL rookie tight end in history to have 5 catches in his first 2 career games. Almost like the Lions knew what they were doing on this reach, on this tight end who doesn't have a lot of numbers. anybody who's watched Sam Laporta and anybody who's watched any tight end coming out of Iowa, they know you're going to get your money's worth in that. So. But, hey, for this running attack, whether it's throwing Eric Allback as a fullback to block or anything, they'll take anybody. Enter Seth Anderson, whose, I believe, only touch against Western Michigan was a bit of a sweep. Apparently, that is not Seth's first go-round. It's one he's been waiting for a while, and he is ready to offer his services in any way possible.
You like being able to do a variety of things for the offense?
Yeah. Any way I can help the team, I'm with it. So.
Did you run at all at Charleston Southern at all?
Nah.
No?
They wouldn't let me. I would, though. Like, they would have got me some jet sweeps. I wouldn't complain.
I was going to ask, when was the last time you ran a sweep?
High school.
Was that a common play at all? Or?
Yeah, that was used to my thing, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. I like jet sweeps.
Sure.
So I'm glad they gave me the opportunity.
Yeah, what was it like getting in the field like that and down the sideline and everything? That's a fun play.
Scored, man. Should have scored. I don't know. It was a good time, though. I was just like, I can't mess this up. It's my play right here. I didn't get the ball, so I was like, I just got to make the most of it. You know what I'm saying?
What are you seeing from Penn State's DBs? I mean, that's a spot that's always going to have a good secondary.
Yeah, they're pretty good secondary, but we got talent, too, so it's going to be a good game.
I'll let the internet overreact to that statement there. And listen, we've seen the sweep work really well for Iowa so far. Caden Weegan had those two big ones, and I think I saw a stat. Caden's leading the NCAA in kick return average yardage.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah, I saw that stat too.
Special teams has been really nice.
I think they need to get the ball in his hands more, and not just on sweeps.
I
Like, if they
wonder-
could throw quick hitters out to him or a slant.
I wonder,
really
and this
quick.
is me with no basis whatsoever, so this works perfectly for the internet. I wonder if those showed in Utah State, they don't these last two games running with Caden, that maybe that wrinkle comes back against Penn State as you're looking for ways to get the run game going when you're down two backs. If you do see a little more of the old throwback Paul Chaney stuff of let's get wide receivers going a little more on sweeps. So you've got Seth, you've got Caden, or maybe you've shown those now that sets up a nice play action on something else. But it's in the repertoire, and it's worked when you use it.
I'd be nervous against this Penn State, a little more athletic front to do like those, but if you can get him one-on-one in a corner, I think, maybe it'd be a good play.
So we'll keep looking for ways to improve the run game, but of course with tight ends down, or with missing Lachey, maybe that's an opportunity for the wide receivers to get a few more looks, a few more reps there. What a great moment it was on Saturday for Deontay Vines, a guy who's just been trying to get healthy, let alone get catches over his time in Iowa City. Gets his first career touchdown. We didn't realize this. We talked about on Sunday about how Cade didn't realize it was his first career touchdown. So I asked Deontay on Tuesday, finally got the chance to talk to him about Cade not knowing about it, and then about that moment, and stumbled onto a revelation that moment was built out of a time of mourning for Deontay.
Right after we got in, I said, appreciate you giving me my first one. He was like, that's the first one? I'm like, yeah, man, took some games to get that first one. So, yeah, definitely it was cool to get there.
What's that moment like? I mean, you just been trying to get on the field and stay healthy
Yeah.
for so long. Just to have that moment and spread the arms, that just had to be everything.
Yeah, that was everything to me. Just it's a true testament of just like, keeping your head down and just keep working. And, yeah, my uncle had passed a week ago, so that's why I got the pink hair and stuff like that. So when I put my arms up and I looked up, I was looking up to him because it just felt like I felt him over me at that moment.
I'm guessing you had a pretty strong relationship with him.
Yeah, he called me superstar, so it was a hard one when he passed, but yeah, so it was cool to finally get in the end zone a week later after he passed, and just felt like that was for him.
Sure. Felt like a little divine intervention, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Kudos to Owen for when I told him this story after we were in between players and Kirk saying Divine's intervention. I didn't even think about that, but that was great. And just, again, a moment we knew was big, but we didn't really know how big. And boy, just life unfolds in mysterious ways sometimes for him in a time of a lot of toughness. To get that moment that he's been chasing was super, super cool to see on a day of first, as we talked about Sunday.
Yeah, and a guy that, I mean, the more we talk to Deontay, I think the more and more everybody really likes this guy. I mean, he's just an easy guy to root for, super personable, super congenial with the fans, with the media, just easy to talk to, opens up, shares things. I mean, he didn't have to share that his uncle died.
Yeah, he brought that up unprompted.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like he seems willing and able to open up to us, and just seems like a guy who is emerging as a guy that the fans are going to like a lot.
Yeah, again, just he's so fun to talk to. He just down to earth, obviously a really confident kid too, but just speaks his mind and shares himself, and you can't ask for much more from a again, these 18 to 22-year-olds who we're inconveniencing sometimes on a late Tuesday morning, trying to bug them about schemes and things from 5 days ago and all that, but always fun to talk to Diante, and certainly we're thinking of him and his family right now. Moving on now to the X's and O's and looking at Penn State, it is the Nittany Lions. They're always, I asked Seth about, they're always going to have great DBs. That's not any different here in 2023. Drew Allar is really entrenching himself as the starting quarterback and showing off as a playmaker. We know that backfield's great. They're always going to have weapons on the outside. Talked about, again, the DB matchup there. This is going to be a big one, I feel at least, for Jay Higgins, Kyler Fisher, Nick Jackson, that linebacking core, that front seven in general. When you got two backs back there and a guy like Drew Allar who can move around a bit, Nick was ruined having to drop back in pass coverage so much. He's going to get a chance, I think, to play the run a lot, and maybe that plays into the stuff he's comfortable with after all his time at Virginia and getting so many tackles. That's for me, that's the key matchup, is not Iowa's running back, so to speak, in the rushing attack trying to get established. What can this defense do against a really potent ground attack?
And Penn State is not, they're 3-0, as is Iowa, but they've not played an easy schedule. I mean, they've got 2 Power Fives on there in Penn State in West Virginia and Illinois as 2 of their wins so far. Drew Allar, this just is indicative of how good he is as a young quarterback and how good that line is. 4 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions through his first 3 games against a vaunted Illinois defense, as Mike was trying to tell.
It's as good as Illinois' defense has looked all year.
Yeah. Only been
Illinois
sacked.
didn't play that bad on Saturday. They turned the ball over like 4 times. Their quarterback did. And I think the stops are there. Sorry to interrupt, Owen. We'll get your thoughts in a second. I think this defense can get stops on them. I just think can the offense score against their defense?
Yeah.
That might be the key.
My only last point I was going to make is that Allar's only been sacked twice this year. We've talked about his left tackle as a guy who I heard some doctorman maybe saying that he was a potential top 10 pick in the NFL draft. So there's, as much as they could possibly get to them, and that defense has been improving, that's as tough of a challenge as they're going to see all year.
Sure, and there's been questions about, Iowa doesn't have that many sacks this year. They've played a lot of up-tempo offenses that aren't going to give you a whole lot of opportunity to hit the quarterback until he's, on a draw or some sort of scramble across the line of scrimmage. 3 teams that Iowa's defense has faced that are all different types of up-tempo, all a little faster than your standard, play with a little more pace. Of course, that Utah State game, still looking at that. So hot out there, wearing the black jerseys off the turf. That's, as you're going to hear from Sebastian Castro, drew the comparison to it being basically a whole game of conditioning. You had those 3 full games as this defense playing a little faster than maybe you're used to. Both Seb and Jay Higgins saying that might be paying dividends here, coming up against the toughest task that Iowa's had all season.
This helps us get aligned quicker. Communication's got to be most important when offenses are getting to the ball fast, and I feel like we've done a great job over the last 3 weeks. Just how complicated our defense is. It can be hard to get all 11 guys on the page, and I feel like we did a good job the last 3 weeks.
The fact that the first 2 weeks it was really hot. I know Iowa State wasn't as fast as Utah State, but Utah State it seemed like a conditioning day that day. It was hot. They just kept on moving the ball as fast as they can. And, I know I feel a lot better. I feel like it really helped me because this past weekend, it wasn't even that hot. And, I feel like I could run for days. I feel like a deer out there. I could just run forever.
Seb running like a deer. Love to hear it. I don't know why I keep focusing on that Utah State game, just the variables of the conditions and how fast that offense moved. I feel like Iowa, the parallel I drew to Kyler Fisher the other day when he kind of gave me a look of what I was doing. Iowa's defense has been in the on-deck circle, swinging the bat with the donut on it, and it feels like the reps they've had and the conditions they've had, I feel like maybe they'd be stronger than they are stronger than they maybe would coming out of a different three-game non-con stretch, just because of the paces they've played, that hot game there, that their conditioning, and you heard Jay talking about just they've learned how to communicate faster and more efficient. Those are 2 things that may not seem like massive variables, but if you're in crazy conditions like a whiteout primetime in Happy Valley in Beaver Stadium, those are the types of things, efficient communication and lungs, those can go a long, long way.
You guys think, I don't know if we even could really speculate at the right answer to this, but do you guys like having, I mean, there's no question, I don't think, even at the end of the year, we're not going to be debating this, that this is the hardest game on their regular season schedule by far.
I think, yeah, from the beginning when we had that 23 schedule lined out, it's going to Penn State any year is going to be tough, but the fact that they're dodging Michigan and Ohio State, yeah, I think this is the crown jewel.
Do you guys, even just as whatever, fans, viewers, spectators, like having that game be early in the year, first Big Ten game, first big test of the year early in the season? Do you think that plays to their advantage, being early in the season when, Penn State is still kind of figuring things out, or is it better to play that game later in the year when maybe the offense has progressed a little bit more and clicked a little bit more, the defense things have gotten figured out, but at the same time, possibly later in the year, you're a little bit more banged up. Maybe there's more injuries that happen. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. If you like that game.
On the way home from Western Michigan, I made the argument that I'd rather swap this game in Wisconsin.
Yeah, you said that.
Because Wisconsin's offense, I think, will be hitting strides later in the season because they're changing the whole, the air raid or, whatever they're working on with. They haven't really clicked. They were down in the second half against Georgia Southern.
Yeah. Their quarterback doesn't turn it over, yeah.
And Penn State, on the other hand, our offense isn't clicking to, I think, its potential. So I think it'd be better off if we played them in the later in the season. However, though, I'd go back to my sophomore year in college in 2009 when this was our Big Ten opener at Happy Valley, and there was a whiteout. It's just a huge momentum booster if you can get that W.
Yeah, that's true.
But Iowa's offense struggled that night in Happy Valley, too. I went back and watched it, and Stanzi had 2 picks. He completed less than half of his passes, but his 2 picks were like, one hits Colin Sandeman in the foot and flies up. It's just such a fluky interception. Yeah, it was, and then the other one was tipped as well. That was a night where Iowa's offense wasn't clicking on all cylinders by any stretch of the imagination. Daniel Murray had a couple field goals. You have Adrian Claiborne with the boom, and Brent Musburger with the great call on him returning that for a touchdown. And then Adam Robinson had just a super tough run to get. I think
they were down 10-0 too early on, and they fought
Jazz
back.
Powell caught that one, beat Amari Spivey. Who beats Amari Spivey in coverage back in 2009? He went to the NFL, and so a minute and a half in, Darryl Clark hits him. They're up 7-0. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong for Iowa. So, in terms of just whether or not I like this game early or not, I think for this team especially that came in with a lot of hope that they could win the West and whatnot, you've had these 3 games where you've looked good at times in spurts. You haven't maybe put a full game, quote unquote, together. How many times do you get full games put together anyways? This is, I think, a great spot just as a barometer of like, okay, this is on paper your toughest game of the year. You go to Madison too, that's probably the silver medal there. Let's figure out where we are, and then we know, hey, if we're 0-1 or 1-0 in conference, we've got everything else ahead of us, and we are able to sort things out from there. I kind of like that.
It certainly works well as that test or the barometer, like you say, because it doesn't have the Big Ten West implications necessarily. Sure. So they're able to kind of figure things out maybe against Penn State. If they struggle, they know the things that they need to work on once they get into the games that truly matter in terms of getting to the Big Ten title game.
Yeah. And this will be the second game back for Jamari Harris. Made his debut again against Western Michigan. 21 and a half months since his last game. He did say, we got to talk to him on Tuesday, and did come out and had a bit of a statement that he was suspended for 2 games for gambling. He is back now, though. Yesterday was actually his birthday. I can't imagine having to make a statement like that, and a bit of a sheepish way to spend your birthday. Not the ideal, but Jamari, a 23-year-old man who stepped up and took responsibility for what he did, and now had also kind of taken responsibility for maybe getting a little too ahead of himself against Western Michigan. Again, they had that long pass for a touchdown that was kind of between him and Xavier Wampa, and said maybe he spent too much time getting too hyped up for the moment. I didn't ask him or accuse him of that. That was just him analyzing his first game back for himself, and then talking about just that time away and what that has done for him, not just on the field but off the field. Jamari Harris really getting introspective when I talked to him yesterday.
As I said, I probably played the game before I played the game. I just tried to dive deep into the film, and I think I just went out there and tried to do too much almost, trying to make a big play, But at the end of the day, I just have to do my job along with everybody else on the field. The 10 other guys, we just have to do our job. At the end of the day, we'll be victorious.
What did you learn about yourself in the time on the sidelines, not just as a player, but a person? I mean, that's a long time away from the game.
I kind of been going through tough circumstances throughout my entire life. So I felt as though just what I went through growing up made me resilient, perseverant, and ready for this journey. I believe that the Lord gives his toughest tasks to his toughest soldiers. And I'm grateful for the opportunity and trying to win every day.
Try to win every day. I think we can all take a lesson from that. I've really enjoyed getting to talk to Jamari a handful of times, just hearing from Deshaun Lee and Cooper DeJean at different times about what he has meant to them, getting to learn film study and all that. We've talked about that quite a bit. But Jamari Harris, he told me he's majoring in business because I asked him, like, you thinking about coaching at all? Because it sounds like you're kind of a natural at it. I know he's got big dreams for whenever football's over. He's probably got a shot to do something as a professional there as well. But Jamari Harris is going to be successful in whatever he does, I certainly think. And he'll be a key against Penn State. Again, they've always got weapons on the outside. And boy, you want a bounce-back game, Jamari Harris might have an opportunity to have one there in Pennsylvania.
It's easy for us to talk about just like the personality of these guys, because that maybe is the biggest thing that just us as individuals bring to this podcast platform that we're trying to relay to viewers, because as much as we show them the sound bites, it's hard to convey their personalities or how a conversation goes or get a full sense of what that conversation is like. And so that's maybe the biggest thing that we can bring here. But to your point, a guy like Jamari too, I mean, I think yesterday was my first time having like a little bit of, not one-on-one, but just like a up-close type scrum interview with him. And that too, just like him coming out and making the statement right away. I mean, another thing that he did not have to do, he'd already returned to the game. I'd honestly already kind of forgotten or like just not even thought about it. So when Matt Weitzel, the SID, said, oh, Jamari is going to say something first, I'm like, uh-oh, is he injured? Like, what's he even going to say? Like, I hadn't even thought about that he might say something about his 2-game suspension. But he came out, just kind of opened with that, saying like that it's a mistake that he regrets, and in his 23 years of life that he's made mistakes, and he's going to make a lot more down the road. But he's just trying to learn and grow, as they say in sports when you make a mistake, and he's just trying to do that. But he too, just in that moment, I'm like, a lot of 22, 23 now, year-old kids.
23 in a day.
That would not be something that a lot of kids would know how to do. Just come out here almost off the cuff. Didn't have a script or anything. Just came out there and said what he had to say.
Yeah, he's an incredible player. We've seen evidence of that, and the more we get to talk to him. And I mentioned this on Sunday, of the fact that you throw helmets on these guys, put numbers on, and it's so easy on your keyboards to just diminish these human beings to what they're doing on a stat sheet. That's why I feel, especially like you said, with the YouTube channel, not to keep plugging everything, but giving you the visual representation of these guys without their helmets, just in shirts and everything else, just getting to talk to them like people, because that's what they are first and foremost. Above all, they're just really great kids, young men to get to talk to and learn about their journeys. And so that's the best part about getting to talk to Jamari Harris and all these guys, and Deontay, who's, again, was so gracious to open up on stuff. It's fun to watch them thrive on Saturdays for sure, but getting to know them as people and
Question on Jamari's interview. Little behind the scenes to the audience, I don't go to those. Owen and Mitch do. When you guys were talking to him, did he talk about the breakdown of the touchdown and the second touchdown that was called back? Because they were both, Did he go through that at all, or?
The only thing he really mentioned to me, and I didn't bring up any specific play or anything like that, the fact that he felt like maybe he was too hyped up just trying to make a play wherever. And of course, anybody who's ever tried to do something really, really hard sometimes knows that that's the worst thing you can do. You have to kind of let everything come to you, and you get a little too far ahead of yourself. So that's the only thing he really mentioned there. And again, I haven't gone back and watched as much film as I probably should. I'm not sure if those were zones where the safety needs to be helping, or if he's man-to-man or anything like that. But you take the lumps so you don't make them again. We saw that the defense as a whole against Western Michigan. They give up 34, 35 yards in the second half after getting burned on that first one. So they'll, whatever mistakes there are, I've got faith in Phil to clean things up.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Penn State go after him right away.
The second one, to me, when I was rewatching it, looked like they were in man and Jamari slipped.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for the Hawkeyes, they got called back because there was a lineman down the field. And the first one, it looked like he was playing an underneath zone, and
that's what I thought too.
It looked like they were in cover two to me, but I'm no football expert. I don't know what it was called. Yeah. And I think X might have taken a bad angle on the tackle. That's a tough play to make as a DB regardless, the corner route on cover 2. But yeah, I just was curious.
No, yeah, I don't recall that really coming up too much, but yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, when we had that Utah State game week 1, Deshaun Lee was in there and they went after him right away, and he was able to shut them down pretty quickly and show that he wasn't going to be the guy that they could pick on. Western Michigan came out, did the same thing against Jamari, and scored on him in that first quarter, and had another touchdown that got called back later in the game. So as I said, I don't think it would surprise me to see Penn State try to take that same approach, going after him and see, is this guy back to 100% yet, or is
you expect some rust when you haven't played for a year?
Yeah,
And
21 and a half months.
Yeah,
it's been a long time. Since
glad he got
played.
the reps though before this game because he's an integral part of this defense.
That's why you do it right there. And picking on him is why my bold prediction preseason was that he was going to have more picks than Cooper. Neither of them have a pick yet, so who wants to win that race? Maybe someone takes the first step on that against Penn State. Let's talk about the things that really matter, which is fashion. What a great thing this is going to be. Iowa revealing on Tuesday they are going to wear black pants with the white jerseys and black helmets in Happy Valley on Saturday. Iowa not one to do a whole lot of alternate uniforms. Rarely, if ever, do you see those from any team on the road. Really cool thing. I know they've worn the black pants against Minnesota at least once, maybe a couple times. With the home stuff, I like the all-black look there too. But I guess the important question again as we get a look at the, I think, was this the surprise reveal or the one that maybe no, this was the actual
reveal, yeah.
So there was a game announcement on Sunday that was done in kind of like a vintage staticky way where there was a split-second look of Cooper standing over Beaver Stadium where the pants went black. And all these
tinfoil guys out there.
Tinfoil. I was going to say the Leonardo DiCaprio Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah, just doing that. I like the look. I don't know how you guys feel about this.
I think this looks infinitely better than their normal away. Yeah. Someone tweeted before they made the announcement, oh, they're going to do this and have one of those Photoshops, and I'm like, this looks so clean. They should do this for every game, and you always say that when you get alternate unis, but sure. I really dig this.
I'm into it. I am a bad fashion opinion guy when it comes to uniforms. I like anything new or different, so bring it on. If there's a new look, then I'm here for it. So I'm willing to default to anybody else's opinion. So new stuff. I'm curious to ask you guys because Iowa, as you say, Mitch, is not a school that does lots of alternate stuff, sure. Alternate helmets, throwback unis, that kind of thing. Comparing Iowa to a school like Oregon, let's say, who basically has a different setup for every single game that they're going to play all year. Which would you rather be at? Because personally, I kind of would like to be at a place where they have different look and different things that they could break out each week.
And that's how you crew at ONC, bring everybody. I like having the standard. I mean, the Iowa stuff. The line back before everybody started having black alternate jerseys was well, Iowa doesn't need alternates because they wear the jersey that everybody wants to wear to begin with. I would like maybe a little more with Iowa. This is a great look. I would like the white on white. We talked about that. Mike and I did too. If there's a white alternate helmet, I think that'd be wild. If you with the black Tiger Hawk and the white. I like what Iowa has, and I like the fact that the alternate uniforms and looks are still more novel. When they announced
a little more special.
Those gold ones with the throwback wings for the Penn State game in 2019. People went nuts for that. I love that look, and they've only worn them once.
We were back on the morning show, and we had
That's right. That was super fun. Of course, do the players enjoy this? That's always the big question. I asked both Jay Higgins and LaShawn Williams about their thoughts on a little bit of a road uniform difference.
Do you guys get as hyped up about black pants as it seems the fans do?
I don't know. It'll be fun to change up the uniforms. Obviously, Coach Ferentz is a big fan of the uniforms and big fan of the socks, so it's always exciting for us just to change some things up.
Do you guys get as hyped up about little things like that, uniform changes?
Oh yeah, we like little uniform changes, but yeah, it's gonna be a nice fit, and I feel like it's gonna look good on us, and we're gonna play good.
Look good, play good. I mean, we saw it in 2017 against Ohio State. They rolled out with those alternates, and that's as good as Iowa's looked in any game in probably the last 10 years. I mean, that game, I always draw the parallel of that, not the parallel, but just draw the conclusion that when Nate Stanley has that Ohio State defender hanging off his leg and he guns it in to TJ Hawkinson to put Iowa, I think, up 3 scores, that is as unbeatable and destructive as Iowa ever. You could not do anything against Iowa that day. They were going to answer everything, and that was as dominant as I've ever seen Iowa look in that game.
I don't have a lot of opinions pre me working here in Cedar Rapids when it comes to Iowa, but oddly enough, when I worked in Sioux City, I would come over to cover an Iowa game about once a year to stock up on B-roll and highlights and stuff, and that happened to be the game that I came to, was that Iowa-Ohio State game. And so I got to be there for that one that I was like, what is happening? Like, who is this Iowa team?
This is not Iowa.
So I got a firsthand look at that. Was that the one? Was that Josh Jackson when he had the 2?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he had an awesome pack.
And that was Ohio State had just come back and beat Penn State the week before. Yeah. That was the J.T. Barrett game, and then they came into Iowa City and. Iowa hits him in the mouth. Monty Hooker has the pick 6, but there was the back and forth, and then Iowa just stepped on the gas. It was fun.
Those helmets, though, that they had that game with, like, the little interlocking eyes all over. Oh, that's like my favorite helmet they've ever had. Those are incredible.
You maybe just answered this question, and Mike, you have probably a little more historical knowledge of throwbacks, too. Favorite Iowa throwbacks, it sounds like, or throwbacks or alternates. It sounds like 2017 might be.
I'd say that one for sure as helmet goes. I think that looks so cool. And but as far as jersey goes, I mean, those feathers they're so stupid looking. They're so dumb.
How dare you?
But I love it. Like, anytime they bring those back, I mean, it's just such a great old school.
The banana Reeboks, yeah. Mike?
I really liked the yellows that they had for Penn State. But the one that Ricky Stanzi wore, I'm trying to get a photo.
2010, Ball State, when they won 45.
The
gold helmets, yeah.
I've got a.
They were super simple, but I loved those. I loved those Ball State ones.
Let me just bring it up.
Yeah, and I think that's the
one on the
one
right.
of the quintessential Ricky Stanzi
these are clean
pictures too. Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you what though, if they ever make a helmet like with this on it, I will go crazy.
There's been you're talking about theories on the internet. Every Iowa football promo video this year for football, and I think they've done it for more sports too, has ended with like the script Iowa in gold or with a gold background, and so there's been like they're teasing something. They're teasing. Helmets like that. People love the gold and script basketball jerseys. Yeah, if they rolled out those for like Minnesota or maybe Illinois or like one of those later games, I think people would flip. So
for the audio listeners, I got a yellow helmet with a black Iowa script helmet, and there's another one too, a black helmet. These were worn like back in the 70s.
That looks like a helmet sponsored by Swarm.
That's
what that looks like,
or
right?
a Waverly Shell Rock.
It's a straight up Waverly. Like,
little Go Hawks,
I think that is Waverly Shell Rock's helmet, possibly. But yeah, that is a Swarm logo.
Yeah, that's you get a free 6-pack with that helmet, actually.
Well, that's what I was going to just quickly point this out too. That what the great thing is about alternates is that, like, at least when I was at UNI, they would do alternate things every now and then, even like on the soccer team, just like the pink shirts for the breast cancer awareness type of thing. And then they would auction those off right after the game, and people could go and buy those. And I'm like, my goodness, the amount of money that the university can make for, let's say, if we're going to auction off these helmets or jerseys and it all goes to the Children's Hospital, like, they could absolutely make an incredible killing on selling those things off.
Yeah, people like different, fun, cool things, and that's what's so cool. It's always the Colonels, who are, again, going to start playing for a Midwest League title tonight. They would do Twins Tuesdays, I think it was, where they would wear the old like powder blues, like that every team in Major League Baseball wore back in the 70s. Those are fun. I think they auction those off too. But yeah, give us a little nostalgia, and it's cool to invest in for sure.
I think our last thing we're getting into is picks here pretty soon.
I've got them pulled up, and we can start once you're ready.
I had one more thing that's like very off topic, but something I wanted to interject with and just discuss with you guys. So, as I mentioned, Field Hockey Podcast now. I went to the field hockey game last week, and afterwards they were announcing that they're trying to build a new facility there right by the field hockey building, where it's going to be all for like field hockey stuff, where they can do meals and all that kind of stuff, training rooms. So they were doing a Q&A with some of the fans, and a guy like spoke up with a question. I think he was a dad of one of the players, and so he talked about how he went out to the UNC game where they knocked off number 1 UNC, and he goes, when I was there were 2,000 fans at that UNC Iowa field hockey game. And he's like, the reason why is because, obviously, when you're at North Carolina in Chapel Hill, they have a system where everybody loves basketball. And so they have a point system where if you go to all these other random events for different sports that are not basketball, you can get upgraded on your seats or get higher priority to get better seats at a game. And he's like, because Beth Getz, the interim athletic director, was taking questions, and he asked her, like, Could we implement something like that, or is that something that we've thought about? Have you guys ever heard? That's like the most brilliant system I've ever heard of for a college.
I love
Have you
that.
heard of something that?
That's
like
super.
that before?
I've never heard of it happening before, but yeah, I mean,
Sounds
to,
really
to
cool.
incentivize supporting the athletic programs that don't always get the spotlight, to then get yourself a little something
Go
bigger.
to a
for the
gymnastics meet.
That's
Go to
awesome.
field hockey meet.
That's
Go to
really
volleyball.
A lot of these are cool events too. I've been to a baseball game, and those are super fun. I've been meaning to go to a soccer game. They always have them on Sundays, and I can't really get out there on Sunday.
You have to have a big draw. Like, I mean, with respect, as a UNI alum, I can say that UNI couldn't pull it off because, you know, it's hard enough time getting people to basketball and football games there. But when you're at Iowa, you've got the football games that people would like. If they knew that they could get a better seat to a football game, yeah, sign me up to go to a volleyball game. Sign me up for field hockey.
That's super cool. By the way, speaking of sports like that, they announced this week that there's going to be a new gymnastics and spirit squad facility. The first program I ever covered at the University of Iowa in college was Larissa Libby's women's gymnastics program. And I remember her 15 years ago saying, like, boy, we'd love to have new facilities. It'd be really great. Annie Zatowski, who's one of Mike and I's former coworkers, she was an intern here. She's now tearing it up at Queen City News down in Charlotte. She was a gym hawk and one of my dear friends. So to Coach Libby and all the gym hawks and all the Spirit Squad members, congratulations. Long time coming to get those facilities. And again, championship programs across the board there.
Program. I mean, when you go into Carver and you see the banners, like they're an NCAA tournament team. Basically every year the gymnastics squad is.
They're great, and I know your Hawkeye Top 7 that you're starting to wrap up. There's some gymnasts on there too, as well. There should be, and field hockey players and all sorts of athletes. That's been so cool to watch that countdown, because you're reminded of just Hawkeye athletics goes far beyond football, basketball, and wrestling. Certainly, a lot of wrestlers, of course, too. But fun to see the Hawkeye history unfolding there. Now we turn to the Big Ten West and our picks for this week. I am trailing because I stumbled out of the gate, then went supernova, and now struggling again, but here we go. So I'll be playing catch up here the rest of the year, 3 games back of Owen and Mike, leading 12-2 so far in 2023. I'm sitting at 9-11. This week's action, the Big Ten, starts on a Friday night in West Lafayette, Wisconsin, a 6-point favorite heading into Purdue. Not sure if we know what Purdue is yet. Not sure if we know what Wisconsin is yet, but who do we like up there in Indiana?
Wisconsin. This is a real, like, I don't know, I could see this as a trap game that, like, Purdue could come out and scare some people. I kind of like Purdue in this game. I think Wisconsin will win, but I could see Purdue keeping it, you know, kind of coming down to a last-minute field goal or something like that, keeping it within 6.
I'm going to take Wisconsin. I think Purdue's wins are against weaker opponents, and
1 win.
Yeah, 1 win. Yep, they've only got 1 win. So yeah, I think Wisconsin will figure it out, at least in this game.
Yeah, this is tough. This is really tough because I still think Hudson Card's going to be really good for Purdue. Tyrone Tracy, again, has shown out, former Hawkeye. Yeah, I think the easy pick would be to fade Wisconsin again. I think if you play as they gave up, Georgia Southern's quarterback had 5 picks in like 2.5 quarters. I think for them to be able to not be able to move the ball as well as they did on offense and still be able to figure it out at the end and pull away from Georgia Southern, I think Wisconsin maybe gets their heads on straight a little bit here, so I'll take them to cover as well in West Lafayette. I would not be surprised, though, if Purdue gets their act together and makes that one close. Going into Saturday afternoon, Florida Atlantic visiting Champaign. The Illini are 1-2 after that close win over Toledo in the opener. They've dropped back-to-back games to Kansas, and who did they play
Penn
last
State.
week? Penn State, of course, yeah. What do we like? Do we think the Owls can cover against the Illini?
I'll go first. I think Illinois gets back. This is going to be one of the first easier games they play, I think. Don't know much about Florida Atlantic. They lost to Ohio by 7. They lost to Clemson by 25. Ohio's a good team.
They just lost Casey Thompson for the season. Former Nebraska quarterback went out with an ACL injury, so they'll have a backup quarterback as well out there.
Another reason to pick Illinois.
Another reason to wait until these guys tell me what they think about these teams before. Thanks for the insight, Mitch. For a lot of those reasons, I mean, I think that Illinois, I'll be
Get
off.
right game.
What's that?
A get right game.
Yeah. I'd take them too. I mean, I think that Mike told us, I thought that you were done picking Illinois, but I'll stick with them this week.
In road games, yeah.
I'll take the Illini too. Luke Altmaier, you see 7 picks and maybe your eyebrows goes up a little bit. He had more than a few last week against the Nittany Lions. He's a great player though, and I think he and Reggie Love can get things going and cover that 14.5 for the Illini. Nebraska hosting Louisiana Tech. Matt Rule finally got his first win as Nebraska's head coach last week against Owen's favorite team, Northern Illinois. Tough spot there for Rocky Lombardi and the Huskies, but Louisiana Tech rolling in 20-point dogs in Lincoln. Do we think they can cover? I'll start with you, Owen.
We've got 4 games to look out for Louisiana Tech. They had a week 0 game. They're 2-2 with wins over Florida International and Northwestern State.
Don't say that name on this
Hawkeye
podcast.
Favorite.
Don't say that name on this
We don't
podcast.
we don't talk about Northwestern State.
We do talk about they just lost to North Texas, Hayden Fry's school before coming to
Mean Green, baby.
Dan McCarney coached down there.
Dan
right?
McCarney and former City High quarterback Andrew McNulty scored the first ever touchdown at Apogee Stadium there when it first opened up. He was played quite a bit for the Mean Green. So there's your Mean Green history.
I would say certainly Nebraska will probably win this game, but I think Louisiana Tech can keep it within 20.
I'm going to take Nebraska to cover. I think this might be one of the flex on them games. They really finally got over the hump and got a big win last week. I wonder if they can do that again. -20 there. Please and thank you, Mike.
Whoops. Yep, -20, not plus. I'm going to take Nebraska too. Speaking of losing quarterbacks, I believe Louisiana Tech lost their starter too on a shoulder injury. He got hit late in that game. The backup came in and did score 14 points, so maybe the backup's better. Who knows? They were down by 14 when he came in. But I think I got Nebraska on this one.
All right, kicking off at the same time as Iowa and Penn State. Minnesota at Northwestern. Gophers coming off their first loss of the year at North Carolina. Never easy to go into Chapel Hill and face Drake May and the boys. Gophers are a 12-point favorite there in Evanston. Northwestern coming off a big loss also down in North Carolina. They lost on the road to Duke 38-14.
There's not a lot of weeks that I'm going to be picking Northwestern this year. I think that, Minnesota wins it comfortably.
I'll take Minnesota to cover 2. Darius Taylor is really, really good. True freshman out of Walled Lake Western in the state of Michigan. Thought it was going to be Sean Tyler coming from Western Michigan leading that rushing attack. Darius Taylor has really made that team his own. I think Nathan Kaliak-Manis maybe gets a little more on the same page with his receivers. He struggled a bit the last couple weeks, but I'll take Minnesota to cover.
I think Minnesota wins, and it's not close, but I do think that Northwestern, I think it's a low-scoring game, so I think they win by like 10. But
okay.
I think Northwestern covers. I don't have a lot of faith in the Minnesota offense to do much other than get what's needed in this game.
All right, here we go to Happy Valley. Iowa, 14.5-point dogs on the road against Penn State. Owen, can the Hawkeyes cover? Can the Hawkeyes win? What do you got?
I was a little surprised to see that big of a spread in this game against 2 teams that are 3-0, both ranked in the top 25. We all, I forget if, I guess if we all did, but when we made the preseason picks game by game.
We all did, yeah.
We all picked Penn State?
Yep.
Yeah. I still would bank on them winning that game, but 14.5 seems like a really big number. I think, you got
Is that fair?
You got me. Iowa keeps it within 14.
So I will say I listen to a lot of national college football stuff, the Cover 3 podcast, CBS, they're pretty good, and some other stuff too. There's not a lot of faith, and I think since we're covering the team and we see them day to day, I think people still think this is the old Iowa offense, and to some extent, like they're not highly rated in the offensive marks. I think it can improve to be better. But I think that the narrative out there is that Penn State is a more complete team, which I would agree with at this point. I do agree with you, though, that I think this is going to be closer than a lot of people think. I think Iowa's defense get a lot of stops against Penn State, but the real question mark is whether we can take advantage of it. So I think that, again, Penn State wins, but I'll take the 14.5 points.
Same for me. I'll take Iowa to cover. I don't know if they'll win. This is my only loss that I picked for Iowa in the preseason, but more often than not, they're going to play close or they're going to win outright. Penn State does have a couple big wins, 2016, 41-14. I think Kirk alluded to that one a couple times on Tuesday. 2012, 38-14. Penn State won in Iowa City, same with that. Or the 2016 game was in State College. But I think Iowa, again, that's a huge spread, and I think the Hawkeyes can cover that. And again, as we saw in 2009 under the lights and the whiteout, your offense doesn't have to be clicking on all cylinders to figure out a way to win in Happy Valley or against Penn State because, again, Iowa, Penn State, and you'll watch it at 6:30 on CBS2. Just show up and figure it out. That seems to be the formula for Kirk Ferentz and company against the Nittany Lions, the chip on the shoulder, even if Kirk says he's over it. Maybe that's still knocking a little bit. What do you hear, Owen?
Is the music coming? I saw the logo come out.
Oh. It's like, what are we talking about?
Oh, wrong button.
CBS,
Wrong sounder.
The CBS stuff.
There you
There
go.
we go. And the royalty, it was good that it was late. We don't have to pay as much royalties now. So there's our picks. There's your kickoff time. Thanks again to everybody who's been supporting and liking and subscribing and everything. One more time on the social plugs, Twitter, Eye on the Hawks, the Iowa News Now YouTube channel, and Instagram pages where you get more content there. Don't forget, it'll be a quick turnaround, all things considered for us, but that live Sunday at noon recap of the Penn State game, I mean, that thing's going to wrap up at 9:30. We'll have a quick 14-and-a-half-hour turnaround to get things figured out. But, again, get in the comment section there on Sunday at noon and interact with us and your questions, observations, anything like that. Need to have the back and forth to really make that thing fun. So please and thank you to everybody who's already done that and everybody who continues to support. Again, this thing doesn't grow without you, so we really appreciate that. For Mike, Owen, I'm Mitch. All we got to do now is play the darn game, and that'll happen at 6:30 on Saturday on CBS2. We'll see you Sunday at noon with that live edition of Eye on the Hawks.